EVE Online is one of the most successful MMO titles out there. It launched in 2003 and it's still going strong today. It's something I've never really got into because the gameplay just isn't for me. Now, the developers CCP Games, they've always wanted to expand the EVE universe, and in 2009 they announced a first-person shooter called Dust 514, their first FPS, and it would play like a Battlefield style game while being connected to EVE Online. Players in EVE Online could hire players in Dust to conquer planets and provide orbital bombardments. To be honest, it's a damn good idea, but in 2011 the game was announced as a PS3 exclusive. Now imagine that, being an EVE Online player which is only on PC, well, and Mac, but that doesn't really count, looking forward to an EVE FPS and being told it's a console exclusive. What a crazy misstep from CCP. Now, the game did come out in May 2013 and it was shut down in May 2016 due to low player counts. Now, I can imagine that low player counts were down to two main reasons. Firstly, it was a damn console exclusive game that was a spin-off from a PC only title. And second, months after the game released exclusively for the PS3, the PS4 would release and the game was not playable on the PS4. It should have just been on PC. Anyway, fast forward to today and they are taking another crack at an FPS spin-off for EVE Online called EVE Vanguard. And as the developers describe it, EVE Vanguard is a new sandbox FPS module connected to the EVE universe from day one and evolved in conjunction with our players. Frenetic, dynamic and socially driven, Vanguard will put players' boots on the ground across the hazardous environments of New Eden. As Vanguard, players will fuel EVE universe's war machine, adding corruption to the front lines, delivering vital resources to the EVE economy and completing contracts that turn the tide of battle. Your next opportunity to impact the future of war in New Eden begins now. Now, it doesn't really tell us what the game is going to be about. It says it's a sandbox FPS, but that doesn't really tell you enough. And for non-EVE players, corruption is also not explained. But what I think corruption is in EVE Online is an effect in solar systems that can govern the PvP and pirate game systems such as spawn rates, loot bonuses and more. So as you can tell from the footage you're seeing, I've played a bit of EVE Vanguard and it's pretty much an extraction shooter. And the basic game loop is like this. First, you spawn into the game. The game doesn't seem to create a fresh lobby for every game like in, say, Tarkov or Hunt, but it seems to be an ongoing map that does eventually have a point where the server will shut down. You choose a contract to complete. These can range from simple kill X enemies, collect X loot, interact with a certain amount of things, or deploy a certain object. You head to the marked location on your map to complete the contract, you fight AI and other players along the way, loot from containers and dead players, craft ammo, equipment and deployables. You can store a clone in a clone vat so you can respawn on death, finish a contract, craft a deployable to extract from the map, or grab another contract. So yeah, it's an extraction shooter. Now, this gameplay loop may not be how the game plays when it fully comes out, but right now it seems solid enough. I would say that during these tests, dying didn't feel like as much of a bad thing as it does in other extraction shooters. You don't lose any equipment as you always spawn in with a default rifle, and that was the only weapon in the test, and you don't keep anything from your previous game apart from the money you earned from loot or contracts, but in the main menu you couldn't use that cash for anything. I do expect this all to change when the game actually releases though, and give you something to use that money on. I think these tests were mainly for the core gameplay. So let's talk about how it plays, and firstly we gotta talk about the gunplay. Now, I quite like the gunplay. In EVE Vanguard it's really solid. The rifle, and in the test, like I said, there was only this one weapon. It has a good amount of recoil, so being able to control it well is really rewarding. Also, there is a ballistic system in the game, the guns are not hit scanned, so the bullets do have travel, so aiming ahead of a moving target is key. Also, there is no bloom in the game, which means your bullets will actually go where you are aiming instead of randomly deviating from your point of aim. To me, any game that uses bloom for its weapons has bad gunplay. And yes, that includes games like Battlefield, apart from Battlefield 5. Basically, by not having bloom in the game, it means that if you lose a straight up even gunfight, it will be because of your aim and not because your bullets have randomly deviated away from where you are aiming. There will be different types of ammo in the game. In the test, there was 2 ammo types, kinetic and energy. Kinetic does more damage to unshielded enemies, while energy does more damage to shields and mechanical enemies like turrets. Generally, though, I mainly use kinetic, as trying to use energy ammo to deplete a shield, then switch to kinetic is just wasted time, and you'd have been better off just sticking with kinetic. One thing that I think is useful though, is you have a passive scanning ability. When you ADS over a target, you will scan the target and it will tell you which ammo type your target is weakest against. But yeah, I just stuck to kinetic. One of the reasons for this is that you can only loot ammo from other players or craft it. And really the majority of my ammo came from crafting, and you can't carry an infinite amount of ammo. So I just crafted kinetic and that was it, and you will be crafting a lot. Movement is fine, there's nothing really to say about it. I think it's difficult to say if a movement system is really good or not, especially when the game is trying to stay a bit grounded instead of something a bit more fantastical and shit like Call of Duty. The only issue I would say was when you are trying to run or jump across some of the rocks, it would just not feel quite right. But I would expect this to be sorted out during development. We do need to talk about the AI briefly, because sometimes they can be pretty brain dead, not noticing that other AI close to them have been taken out, or just standing in obviously bad positions during a gunfight. But then on the other hand, they can feel quite intelligent. Sometimes they can take really good positions against you and move really well against you, doing good flanks or falling back to better positions. There's something I hope they keep working on, because they really need to make the AI more consistent. I did touch on the contracts you can accept earlier, and they are all pretty basic stuff. Kill X amount of enemies, collect X amount of resource, interact with this type of thing. I think they really need to expand on the type of contracts and make them more interesting. Also, I'm guessing EVE has a vast history tied to it with many factions in the lore, so they could really make the contracts work a bit like Tarkov, where doing contracts gives you reputation with a certain faction or vendor, which gives you benefits with that faction or vendor, like extra stuff to buy, extra cosmetics, or maybe benefits for your EVE Online account. So it's a pretty good shooter, and I think if you're into sci-fi or extraction shooters, you should keep an eye on it. I believe that the game will be free to play when it comes out, which is a really good thing, and there'll be microtransactions, hopefully only for cosmetics. And I think the main obstacle the game will face is attracting and keeping non-EVE Online players. I think EVE players will generally be interested in the game anyway, and I think they would expect some benefit to them by having both an EVE Vanguard and EVE Online account. But it can't be too much of a benefit, since it could annoy the non-EVE Online players. They can't just make Vanguard as a game that exists to link to EVE Online. It needs to exist as its own separate entity that gives players a reason to play it and keep playing it. I'll be keeping an eye on this game and its future, and I plan to cover it again when I can get my hands on it and once it's been updated a bit more. So if you liked the video, give it a like, a dislike if you didn't. Let me know what you think of EVE Vanguard down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.